Yo, so my name is Jirka Helmich and I'm an Android developer here in STRV for over a year. And we've came up with some extension of MVVM, but it's not exclusively the same. It's kind of different. And you will kind of manage it on huge projects and whenever you want the constant separation. So it's called VIPER, and you might ask yourself, what is it? And I'm asking why it's not working right now. So I will here and all right. So what's VIPER? VIPER's it's been already implemented on iOS, and it's kind of implementation of clean architecture for mobile devices. And I've kind of transferred the architecture from iOS. I've made some changes to it. I've adapted it to Android, and I've kind of came up with extension of ViewModel, clean architecture implementation on iOS, which is VIPER, and combine it all together, and we've got VIPER on Android right now here. So, so we've got 5 layers in here, and as you can see, each of the layer is separated. It's holding the single responsibility pattern, and it's easy to read each of the single layers. Yeah, you will not be kind of able to read whole the project easily, but single layers are kind of structured right now that are easy to read and easy to adapt to growth changes. So we've got interface communication between each of the layers, and each of the layers, if you will go from the bottom to top, has no reference to its parent, but it's working like that other way up. So view has a reference to presenter and so on, and they are communicating right now exclusively via interfaces and abstraction right now. So they can be easily testable. There are constant separations right now, and as you can see, a view is just an activity or fragment right now, and it's holding the stuff like Android API and so. It's just supposed to render a view, and so I'll get to that later, right? There's a presenter there. It should handle all the UI events, and it should notify the view about any changes in the data models and so. There's the view model then. It's communicating with presenter, and what it does, it basically prepares the data to presenter-friendly data from those rows. There's an interactor there. It's also called use case. I've chosen the interactor in here. And what it does, it basically takes all the data you need from various sources like database, APIs, and so, and it just passes them to the view model so they can be kind of converted to the presentation-friendly ones. And there's just entities right there. So those are simple objects, POJOs. So view. View is basically right now an activity or fragment. It should take care of the following. So it should take care of UI rendering, UI components, and all the Android API stuff like creating menus, handling permissions, and so you can also pass these things to the presenter to be handled there via view model or so. But right now, just how you implement it. It should wrap main view objects like context, activity context, binding, and so, and pass into the low levels. There's a presenter there. It should behave like a bridge between the UI and the data. So, like presenter should handle all the UI events you have defined in your layout. I'm right now using a data binding to do so. So I've got data binding event handlers defined in my interface. The interface is referenced in the layout, and through all those events which are kind of handled in the presenter, I'm working with data, and you'll see view model. View model is basically right now a class which I recommend you to use on Android right now with VIPER, because it should handle all the data and state the view should kind of anticipate. So view state operations, like we've got a stateful route now, for example, or some other data which are kind of connected to the view. We operate all those states in our view model. So it has got to be persistent to the UI changes, to the configuration changes, and so. And we've got implemented this in our library. You'll see in the end. There are just some view-related data operations, because view should just display the data it gets and shouldn't care about anything else. So what we do right now in here, we get the data from the interactor, and we don't know where it came from or so. We just define interface of data we need. Interactor implements that, and we just convert those data to the presentation-friendly data and notify. In our case, I'm using base observable as a parent for the view model. So we notify the view about those changes, and just right after that, they are just kind of done. Or what you can do, you can, or that's how you should do it. You should pass or just like notify the presenter via some callback about the data, pass the data, and the presenter should just bind them to the accordingly view component. Then we have interactor here. It just basically wraps all the business logic and so, and it's also called use case in the clean architecture. What it basically does, it takes the data from various sources, like I said, SQL database or API or shared preference or whatever you want, and just provides those data to the view model. And what it should do right now, it should implement an interface, which should be kind of described just right for some view model. So for example, if I've got a settings view model right now, I will define an interface with all those data I need to have in my settings screen. The interactor will define, will just implement this interface as well, will provide me with the data, and in a view model, I will just convert them to the presentation friendly and pass the callback to the presenter to show them. It's just basically pure Java class, or it can handle some things like context and so, but you shouldn't go much far from this. Then you've got entity in here. Is basically a POJO object, and it should be related just to your business logic. And entity should not be kind of visible to any other components in the structure. So you can have entities in presenter and so. It should be only related to the interactor, which basically handles them and converts them more. We've got router implementation right now here, which is similar to navigator pattern, and it has been converted from iOS implementation of VIPER. I don't know if we need to use it right now, but we do, because it's kind of better for us to use it when testing. And what it basically does, it handles all the fragment activity starting or so. You know, we are not handling it just right like iOS do. We have intents to it for it, and system does it for us. So it's just kind of simple utility class where we define we want to start an activity or get a new instance fragment or so, and it just returns that. You don't have to use it, but it's nice if you do. Why should I use VIPER? There's some motivation to use this architecture. Okay, so why should I choose VIPER for my project? Imagine a situation where client want to get his project it doesn't matter in which time period, and he wants to have a stable, robust, long-term project where you will handle all those things relatively fast. It will be easy to adapt to growth and changes and so. And you also want to use a test-driven development when you're using VIPER, because not so much clients will want to do this, but when someone will want to do it, it will be kind of time complex to do so, but it will be clean to read, clean to understand for any upcoming Android developers you will have on your project. It will also have a really good constant separation because each of the things you have to handle on your project will be separated, reusable, and really nice to test. It's kind of nice modularized, and what you get from using VIPER over MVVM, it's kind of competitive. We'll get to that later. It's my favorite quote from Clean Code series book. It's by Uncle Bob, as you've seen him in the previous presentation. It just says it's not enough for code to work because we are all developers, we are all humans, and we need to kind of know what the people before us wanted to say us, right? We want to know what's happening there, and we don't want to spare so much time just looking for some code opportunities. So, there's next slide. What's the difference over the MVVM? I will not right now share some differences with MVP or so. I will just show some comparison to the MVVM because it's some extension right now of MVVM and yeah. Okay, so MVVM is kind of simple. When you want to build some small prototype or some small project, you're a startup, you don't have so much money, you want to develop your application really fast, you want to kind of have some good architecture, but you don't want to have so complex code, so over-engineered code. So you use MVVM. But right now, if you imagine a project, which is a long-term project, it's a huge project, you will have a lot of developers on it, and you will have some kind of issues right now. If you want, just choose some huge architecture which is easy to adapt to kind of any new changes or so. The developers will become unhappy right now because they will write so much code, it won't be readable, it won't be testable, and you will kind of get stuck in a moment where you will want to change the code, but you won't have time for it or so, or resources. So you should start with, if you know you're going to have a big project, you should start with VIPER because, as you can see, it's overkill for simple applications, and you wouldn't just really use its real potential in there. And you would just want to kill yourself because it would be so complex to implement it. And what's good on it? As I said, test-driven development approach, because due to some constant separation in there, you will have really good testability because you can test all of the single layers and you don't have to bind it to any other relations what you have in your structure. So it's easily testable to test single layers because right now when using the abstraction, we don't have any references to all the other layer structures or so you can easily test it. Time complexity. Well, I've spent sleepless nights implementing kind of the right architecture or implementation of the architecture on Android because there's so much limitations and so you should not reinvent the wheel when you're building a new huge project. You would probably be so sad you would kind of give up on it. And you shouldn't be patient and careful when building the base because you're gonna get into so much troubles. And so if you kind of want, if you kind of would do some mistakes and so you shouldn't reinvent the wheel. You should use some libraries or so, but there is not much of them because there is not much of huge Android applications because, by definition, Android application should just be a simple application to show you some stuff, and so it shouldn't be kind of complex. Testing. Well, we get to this point right now. Well, what do we use for testing? We use GUnit or RoboElectric unit test for interactor and view model because they are kind of binded to the view. right? So we can test how we prepare the data, how we acquire them, and we can be sure it's kind of done correctly if we test those two, and we don't have to care about activities or present or so. However, to test view and presenter, we'll need to use the UI test as espresso, because presenter by default and by definition is binded to the view. So we cannot test it without it, right? And we'll test view with UI test as we do all the time, right? How to? I will show you a simple application I've done. You might not get it, but you're not supposed to right now because it's kind of complex. Just gonna exit. Okay, so I've got a sample project right now. It's a simple weather application. It just acquires the data from OpenWeatherMap API and shows them on the screen. Okay, so just so you see, there's a layout in here. Everybody can read it or see it? Yeah, okay. So as you can see, it's a really nice application. I've designed it by myself, and it has an edit text, a button, and also 2 text views. What it basically does right now, it's getting the current weather for the location we input in here and displays it here. What's this? This is a kind of response if it was successful or not, right? So I will just right now show you the activity. Activity uses the base presenter activity I've made in my library. And what it basically does in the background, it just handles all the stuff like binding and so. And as you can see, you have a VIPER config in there. That's just right now my utility to handle the changes and to rebind the presenter to the view after the configuration changes. And you are initializing a presenter in here. I've also been thinking about using a reflection to do so without the use of the abstraction, but that wouldn't be just pure VIPER and clean architecture implementation. Okay, so I will close it and I will go to the core. And okay, so I will start with presenter. So presenter, what it basically does right now, it implements 2 interfaces. Each of them is kind of binded to the presenter because we have an interface on each of the sides of the presenter to communicate with the view and the view model. Right now, I have an onPresenter created method, which is called only once and won't get called on the configuration change also. I'm just right now in the presenter working only with view via binding. Setting text, and it's been prepared in view model for me, so I don't care about it right now. It's presentation friendly. I present it, and that's how it's supposed to be. As you can see, there is a method. It's called refresh weather data, and what it basically does, it's just calling setup weather information, and the setup weather information method has a 1 argument. It's a location. And we are kind of propagating the location we have in our edit text just right to this method. So it will download the data for the location, but you will see. What it basically does then, it just propagates the callback. So we have on weather information ready method in here, and we do something according to it. I'll close it, and I will go to the view model. View model is kind of complex right now. What it just right now does. Okay, so you got an observable field state. We are using this for stateful layout, so we notify the stateful layout. We are just right now in progress or empty offline, or we'll just show content. There is a presenter view model contract right now. I'm using this contract to notify the presenter I've done some data, I've prepared some data, and he can accordingly work on it. I'm implementing an interactor in here. What's kind of important right now is you can see there is a generic type where the view model interactor contract, which is a contract where I define all this data I need in my view model, so interactor can prepare them for me. There's the method, as I said in the previous screen. It was, or it's about setup weather information. So as you can see, I have a kind of mistake in here, but just doesn't go right. It shouldn't be state content, but state progress, but doesn't matter. Get interactor, what it basically does, it just loads the data, and we get them via callback. Because I use retrofit in here, I get them via RxJava subscribe callback. You kind of won't understand what's happening here because it's kind of complex. But if you would like to understand it, you can speak to me after, and I can show you what's doing. I will show you the interactor, and I have a weather interactor in here. What it basically does is it's extending the retrofit API interactor, and it's providing the contract we use in here. So we gonna provide contract we need to use in our view model. The interactor will implement it, and we just don't care about the data right now, because if client will come to us and say, I don't want to use API for this data anymore, I want to use just a SQL database or so, I can just easily go rewrite the retrofit API interactor to SQL interactor or so, and I will just implement the data according to SQL, and view model or any other layers just doesn't care right now what's happening there, because it's just getting its data, and it's only up to interactor to implement them right now. So easy to change and adapt to changes. I'm just think right now in here, and that's as you can see, it's a really simple class. I can throw it out, but I won't, because VIPER is based on the keyword, I think. So because as I haven't said, yeah, sorry, VIPER stands for View, Interactor, Presenter, Entity, and Router. So if I want to have a router in here, I have VIPE, and I don't want to have VIPE. And I think that will be it about the sample project. It's kind of complex, and I don't think so you will understand it. I don't want to underestimate you, but right now it's too complex to get it kind of from one presentation in half an hour. And so, present, right. Yeah, just right there. So, I hate it because I need to implement so many things, but in the end, you will thank yourself, because it will be so easy to adapt, so easy to test, that you will just love it, because it's easy to read, easy to understand, and if you want to change something, it will be easy job, and you won't just spend a lot of days on it. I've got my demo project in here. It's a module sample, and I use the VIPER architecture in here. Binding, RxJava, retrofit, and JSON. Sources. Well, that's where I got my inspiration, right? Thank you. Any questions? Well, this is implementation of clean architecture. I haven't done it yet, but I can imagine it would be great to do so. But we haven't got such a big project in here to really kind of benefit from the VIPER architecture, right? It would be some huge application like Facebook or so where you can use it. Kind of just right now, as I said, this is kind of overkill for most of the applications on the store right now. You just need a huge project, long-term project with test-driven development approach or so to kind of be ready to benefit from these approaches. This approach, right? Any other questions? Okay, so I think we can go and get some beer upstairs. It's in the 7th floor, and we be glad if you would take your clothes with yourself, because we will close in here the third floor. Okay? Thank you.